In the village of Bow Clayton, Barnaby and Jones investigate a murder in a haunted wood. To solve the case, they will need a ghost of a chance. Cue awkward laughter.
Ha 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 ha.
We're talking ghosts.
Psychics.
And Barnaby date nights on this episode of
Welcome to Midsomer.
Hello, and welcome to Midsomer, the podcast where we dissect all the mysteries, the murders, and the many weird things about the long-running hit TV show Midsomer Murders. I'm your host, Eric Buscher, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Eileen Becker. Hey, Eileen.
Hey, Eric. Today we have a special guest joining us. She's the author of the book Grave Expectations, just out now, and a huge Midsomer Murders fan. It's Alice Bell! Yay!
Yay! Welcome, Alice.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
We're excited to have you. As soon as I saw the book and read it and saw that you were Midsomer fans, I emailed Eric and said, we're going to have a guest.
Well, you do throw the challenge out that you've seen more episodes of Midsomer Murders than in your author bio.
Them's fighting words, aren't they? Yeah. But I think I'll have to retract it now because I moved to Ireland and there is genuinely no way to watch it here. You can't get BritBox here. You can't get Acorn TV. It's not on Netflix in Ireland. I cannot watch Midsomer Murders anymore.
Oh no.
No.
I know. So this is amazing for me to visit again.
When did you start watching Midsomer? How old were you?
I'm 33 now. So when I first started watching it, I didn't watch them when they first came on TV. I was a tiny bit too young, but I cannot overstate how much Midsomer is just always on TV in the UK. ITV have it, they block it like back to back to back for so much of like the kind of mid-afternoon slot. Because I know, a lot of the topics, I mean, even on the podcast before you've mentioned, like they go to the incest well quite a lot. There's all that kind of stuff. But it's scheduled at sort of like 3 p.m. and, all the advert blocks are like for like riser chairs and stuff. So it's aimed at sort of like older viewers and things. But I would just sit and watch it for hours. So I was about sort of 13, 14, I think, when I started watching it.
Not all of us are really old. Okay, so
I know, right?
right?
It's for viewers of all ages.
I'm wondering what village the incest well is.
I mean, I could hazard a guess.
Tell us about your book.
What Grave Expectations is a sort of modern cozy crime. It's actually, I guess, the murder takes place in an old sort of crumbling country house, and it's inspired, that setting by where I grew up, which is kind of midsummer country. I'm from Wiltshire, and midsummer is sort of around, Hampshire and Berkshire, and it's sort of inspired by that area of the world where there are just a lot of weird people and weird old houses that have, a strange history. And it's about a kind of hapless, burnt out freelance medium who goes to one of these old houses and finds a murder victim ghost and has to figure out what happened and who done it with the help of her best friend who happens to be a ghost. And yeah, I guess hijinks ensue.
What I loved is that you took the traditional detective and sidekick and turned it on its head. You've got this psychic, and the sidekick is a ghost, and the sidekick, gets to like do all the things that I'm sure Barnaby would love to do without a warrant, because she can go into people's rooms and snoop around without any permissions.
Yeah.
As we've said on the podcast before, Eileen and I both have day jobs working for a major publishing house that is publishing Alice's book, and that's how we both had a chance to read it beforehand. It is a fantastic book.
Thank you.
And I also love I loved the ghost Sophie. Especially as she's I love that she's still kind of a rebellious 18-year-old forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's, if I was putting my lit crit hat on, I would say that it is, it's a sort of metaphor for being a millennial, right? Because like millennials now, we're actually quite, adult. Like we have mortgages, and some millennials are in their 40s, early 40s now, but like we're still sort of the punchline for being like, children. And so, Claire is like in her mid 30s, but she's always stuck with this inner teenager, it's kind of Arrested Development, not allowed to grow up sort of thing. But yeah, but thank you very much for having me on.
What's your favorite episode of Midsomer?
I have. Do you know what? I thought you might ask me that, and I made a list, and I've got so many. I've got a load on there. I think one of my. I really like Country Matters, which is the one from series 9 where there are 3 housewives who just become like high class sex workers who each offering a different kind of service. I think that one's really fun. I also really like The Dark Rider, which is a more recent one, but it's got James Callis playing twins in it.
Yes.
And I love that he's one of them's like a kind of, nice guy twin, and the other's an evil twin, and he does like like a kind of I'm the nasty one kind of voice, so you can tell which is which I love. And I also like Last Year's Model, which is a Series 9 one as well. And that is the episode where Barnaby already solved the case, and it's the trial of a woman who was found, arrested and charged with killing her best friend. But then Barnaby starts to think that he's got it wrong. And it's a really interesting kind of flip, I feel, on how they do it.
I love that they made a courtroom drama without focusing too much on the courtroom. It was still very much we're going to go back and investigate it for real and see what we missed. And I really love that about that episode. And Country Matters we referred to quite often because it's so much fun.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, today we're going to talk about none of those episodes. Eileen, why don't you tell us what we're talking about today?
Well, this week we're talking about Talking to the Dead, which, sounds a little familiar about Alice's theme in her book. Claire talks to the dead, but this is the 7th episode of the 11th series. It originally aired May 5th, 2010, and it was directed by Sarah Hellings and written by David Lawrence. Let's communicate with the spirits.
Spoiler warning, we will be discussing the events of this episode, including the identity of the murderer. So if you haven't watched it yet and don't want to know who done it, pause this and go watch it. We'll still be here when you get back.
Well, it's blood, all right. Whether it's human's another matter. And this is how it was found? Yeah, same as the other cottage. Breakfast on the table, tea still warm, kettle on the hob. No sign of the occupants.
If that isn't human blood, George, what is it?
4 people live in these cottages, no sign of any of them.
In the village of Bow Clayton, hunky postman Sam Nelms finds the cottage of Stanley and Nesta Goodfellow abandoned, with breakfasts half-eaten and a kettle starting to whistle. DCI Tom Barnaby and DI Ben Jones arrive just in time for Coroner Buller to do a huge info dump. Along with the Goodfellows, neighbors Colin and Molly Thomas are also missing. They live close to the large Priory estate and the Monk's Barton Woods, which locals claim are haunted with weird lights and screams. Reverend Brimstone Stone informs them that these are the ghosts of monks who were murdered when the abbeys were dissolved in the Middle Ages. We also meet Stone's wife, who seems to like him about as much as everyone else does. Not at all. The Goodfellows worked as caretakers at the Priory, and a search of their cottage finds a huge high-def TV they couldn't possibly afford. A visit to the Priory finds signs of a break-in, and then Jones gets locked inside an Iron Maiden. They meet with the owner of the Priory, Linton Pargeter, who happily points out all the expensive antiques. Cyrus Levino, TV psychic and self-proclaimed ghost hunter, comes to town to help the restless ghost find peace using his magic crystal. But instead he manages to uncover a half-buried dead body with his magic stool. The body isn't one of the Thomases or the Goodfellas, though, so what's that about? When they realize that Nelms never delivered the mail, they go question him and find out he's been delivering the package to Reverend Stone's wife. He admits stealing the mail he was supposed to deliver, which contained a Netsuki, a small figurine like ones Barnaby had seen at the Priory. Jones
Mhm.
asks local antiques expert John Temple about it, who claims it's not worth much. In the woods, the police come across a hut, a well, and the ruins of the abbey, but no missing people. The detectives notice a mysterious SUV rolling around. Hargater goes for a walk in the woods and hears the play Medea blaring from the Thomas's house. He investigates and finds the body of Molly Thomas on the floor. She's only been dead a few hours, shot in the back with a shotgun. Whoever killed her couldn't look her in the face, and she had turned on the radio to draw attention before she died. Barnaby and Jones see a pulsing light in the woods and set out to find the source. As they enter the dark forest, Barnaby tells Jones to stay close, and then they are immediately separated by the fog. When they reunite, they track down a man running from them to the abandoned shack. Inside, they find Stanley Goodfellow, speaking only in gibberish and unable to tell them what happened. Tourist info this week, we are visiting Bow Clayton. Eileen, you want to tell us a little about it?
This is our only visit to Bow Clayton. It has the priory and the Monk's Barton Woods, supposedly haunted. There are no meddling kids allowed. There's also a nice New Age bookstore. A little interesting note on the priory, though. If it looks familiar, it was also used as the lodge of the Golden Windhorse, the New Age commune from Death in Disguise in Season 1, which we have discussed. In real life, it is Nether Winchendon House, and you can get married there. The house dates from the 12th century, with additions made by Jasper Tudor, who was the great-uncle of Henry VIII, who we'll discuss later, and the land was once owned by the wife of King Edward the Confessor. If it looks familiar, sort of, but not completely, they use the back of the house for one show and the front of the house for the other. It's very fun how they do that whole filming thing. The hall where Lavanu spoke also hosted a fatal Spanish night, which we have also discussed.
It's like they keep reusing sets.
It is. It's amazing.
I do that whenever I watch it. I try and work out if they've used a house before, because there are only so many in England.
But some of them are so big they can use parts of houses for one and use it for another part for another. And they also reuse a lot of pubs.
Yeah.
This whole episode sort of centers around ghosts and the ghostly woods, and Barnaby doesn't believe in any of it.
Yeah, he throws so much ghost shade this whole episode, especially because Jones is sort of a bit more spooked, I guess, and Barnaby just keeps making jokes about it. Like when I think Jones says like, "Oh, we tested that water stain in the house, and it has traces of blood," and Barnaby just goes, "Oh, not ectoplasm," Like, he's just so completely. It's not ghosts, And it's similar to how he was in the episode you discussed last time, where he's just like, well, it's not aliens, so it must be something else,
Both Barnabys tend to be very grounded in what they don't tend to believe a lot of. But I always find that Nettles has a way of doing it without being. He doesn't seem arrogant or cocksure. He's just like, yeah, there's no such thing as ghosts, guys. There's no such thing as aliens. Come on.
Yeah. And there's even a scene where they get separated. It's very funny, where Jones is like, I heard you calling for help, and he was like, I was not calling for help. I was attacked by an owl. Very funny.
The convenient owl excuse. I use that all the time. But the show does seem to imply, through the reactions and what happens at the very end, is that the ghosts could very well be real. So I think and there's another episode with the ghost that kind of comes on the side of, maybe there are ghosts.
Maybe that's why they never did another episode there, because they'd have to explain the ghosts again. Someone else would get frightened. No, it's great. I do really like the flashbacks they do as well, showing the monks being killed by the knights. But we'll get onto that, I expect, in a moment. But
yeah, and that kind of goes to the whole, like, the central, like, if you want to go with the philosophy of this episode, it's religion versus superstition. But sadly, both sides are championed by the absolute worst people.
Yeah, and shout out Anton Lesser as well, who I think is my MVP in this episode, playing the Reverend. He's so good. He's great. He's another one of those British kind of Shakespearean character actors that you see in so many things, and he's fantastic in this.
he's great, but he is so oblivious to like what's clearly going on in front of him, like which is his wife is
Yeah.
that magnificent scene where she's cleaning his perch at the top, and he just walks right on by and does not realize that the mailman's down there doing
things going on in the pulpit that don't normally happen in the pulpit.
I mean, yeah, I mean, a horny postman has cropped up before in Midsomer as well. It's one of my favorite little tropes.
You know, they deconcentrated that church all over the place.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well, that postman didn't have to ring twice.
I really like as well that, because you mentioned the theme being, you know, these two opposing belief systems, and one thing I thought was amazing is that they dressed Levanu, the kind of mystic, and the Reverend the same. You know, they're wearing very similar outfits with the white collars, and obviously the Reverend is wearing a cross, and then Levanu just has this big crystal necklace, and they're really, really nicely mirrored when they have their fights, their showdowns.
And they're also mirrored in the sense that they're both. I really got the sense that they're both true believers. Obviously, Brimstone very much believes in religion and God. I got the sense Levanu really does believe in what he's doing. You know, they could have easily shown him to be a con artist, and instead, you know, he seems to sincerely think he is bringing peace to these spirits and whatnot, while also being able to turn a buck, which, you know.
Listen, it's hard out there, you know. I wrote a note here that I want to get in quickly as well. You mentioned the big TV that Ben Jones is really impressed by, and I just loved his line read because he goes, "Nice telly."
Didn't he comment you could watch all the you get all the games?
Yeah,
like really great.
Yeah, something to watch his football on.
Although I have to wonder, do you think the Priory has cable?
I mean, judging by my own life experience growing up in that time and in that sort of place, I would say it barely has an internet connection. So probably not getting. You're getting like 4 terrestrial channels on that TV. Yeah.
I kind of liked all the dialogue that Levanu was like. He is a seeker of the truth, or my personal favorite, let the flame of love be your bomb.
Yeah. No, it was really good.
That's a little bit of sexy talk there.
But so when he finds that body, he is clearly standing right on and it's only covered by like a thin layer of dirt and leaves. How do you stand on a body and not recognize what you're doing?
Because his helper like shoves that magic stool thing right through the guy's hand, and you would have thought like someone is standing on that guy's, you know, chest basically. But
let's put the stool down right here on this lump. This is a great place to sit down.
And how if you are a psychic, did you not feel the body? Even in a spiritual sense, if not through your feet.
Yeah, it's funny because he kind of tries to retcon it that way in the kind of second half, doesn't he? Where he gets asked like, "That must have been a huge surprise," and he said, "Well, not to me. If you have, you know, my gifts."
Which makes you wonder: is he just stumbling over dead bodies all the time? If this is like, if he's really got this power. So, as this episode does center a key detail center on the dissolution of the monasteries, Eileen, you have a history corner for us?
I do. The monasteries in England were dissolved between 1536 and 1541, ordered by Henry VIII after his break with Rome so that he could finally get into Anne Boleyn's knickers. He also raided the monasteries as a cash grab, mainly to fund his military campaigns and to fund his rather lavish lifestyle. At the time, there were nearly 900 religious houses in England, occupied by around 12,000 people, about 4,000 of whom were monks, according to British historian George W. Bernard. Most of the religious houses had been founded in the 11th and 12th century, and fans of the Brother Cadfael mysteries will get a glimpse into monastic life during the Anarchy, when Empress Matilda and Stephen of Blois warred over the crown in the 12th century. Interestingly, the Brother Cadfael Chronicles were written by Ellis Peters, the pen name of scholar Edith Pargeter. One can't help but think that Linton Pargeter's name was done as a bit of an homage to Edith Pargeter and the Brother Cadfael mysteries, especially since he lives in a priory and is surrounded by the ruins of an old abbey. Religious houses owned about a quarter of the land in England and a huge amount of wealth, which made them enticing targets for Henry. To be sure, there were many valid complaints about the monasteries, especially with the vast amounts of wealth, leading to a lot of corruption, and reforms were widely needed. Still, even after the Act of Supremacy in 1534, which made Henry the head of the Church of England, most people did not change their way of worship during Henry's reign, as Henry would not fully embrace Lutheranism or broad reforms. It was basically Catholicism without Rome until the major reforms of his son, Edward VI. The Catholic Church and the monasteries were especially popular in the north of England, and they contributed to the Pilgrimage of Grace in 1536, a popular uprising that originated in Yorkshire. It opposed the break with Rome, the Protestant policies of Henry's chief minister Thomas Cromwell, and the dissolution of some of the smaller monasteries. This first round of dissolutions were mild and mainly aimed at reform, and Henry made sure to provide for the monks and nuns from the suppressed religious houses. In 1537, however, Henry's attitude toward the religious houses began to change, likely motivated by what he saw as the threat to his authority by the Pilgrimage of Grace. In 1538, the dissolution sped up, with former monks and nuns giving pensions, cash, and clothing. The monks voluntarily dissolved. They understood that they would be treated better. By 1539, almost all the monasteries had been dissolved, though the abbots of 3 of the recalcitrant monasteries were executed for treason that autumn. The monks themselves were pensioned off at £4 a year, which was more than most any of the nuns got. The dissolutions were primarily peaceful. The exception was during the Pilgrimage of Grace, which resulted in the execution of 216 people, including 38 monks. However, I could find no record of any massacres, especially in the southern part of England, where the reforms and dissolutions were met with more acceptance. After the dissolution, many monastery churches became village churches, while others fell into ruin, as we see in the woods of Monk's Barton.
I love that, like, Henry VIII, do you know, because, like, I've been horny. Lord knows I've been horny, but I've never created...
You've never established an entire religion just so you can have sex?
Like...
Lord knows I've been horny, period. You know, guys will do anything sometimes, right?
Guys will literally make a break from Rome and start a new religion instead of going to therapy.
All right. Well, speaking of what guys will do for sex, we're going to start our cast highlights with Bill Ward, who was our sexy mailman, Sam Nelms. He worked as an advertising executive before becoming an actor in the 80s. His career really took off in 2003 when he was cast as Charlie Stubbs on Coronation Street, which he played until 2007. He also had a lengthy stint on Emmerdale, as well as appearances in The Bill, Heartbeat, and Legally Blonde, the musical. So during the pandemic, Ward had to get a job as a Tesco delivery driver because several acting jobs were canceled and he needed money. And God help whoever he was delivering to, right? Since then, though, there was articles about this came out, since then he managed to get some roles on Afterlife, Before We Die, Vera, and The Hunt for Raoul Moat, or Moat. I don't know.
It's Raoul Moat. He was a big story. He was big headlines here in the UK.
Who is he?
It's kind of a long story, but he was involved in a shooting and then a standoff. So it was just kind of a big headline here. I think I'm getting that right. I hope I'm thinking of the right person.
See, that wasn't that long a story.
Yeah, we have those kinds of things happen here all the time.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing about, like, you've identified before that, like, there is a huge body count in Midsomer, and, you know, like, nobody would ever stop talking about it. Like, nothing happens in these small towns where I'm from. So, like, in ordinary circumstances, a murder, you'd be dining out on that for the rest of your life.
Mhm.
But like in this, 3 people minimum die an episode.
There's actually a term for they named it after Murder, She Wrote. It's called the Cabot Cove effect, where like these shows where they have these small towns with these kind of high murder rates, like Cabot Cove and Midsomer would have murder rates comparable to Detroit or DC in the 90s. But yeah, it's just so like nobody notices.
Yeah. I like house prices must be really good in Midsomer, you know. And you think as well, like one episode, like maybe a superintendent would have come in and been like, Barnaby, the numbers, what's going on? You gotta, we need to focus on prevention here, Barnaby.
That's going to be in the new spinoff, The Midsummer Wire.
Community policing, Barnaby.
Paul Greenwood played unhelpful antiques dealer John Temple. Now, as a teen, he wanted to be a singer like Frank Sinatra, but a friend encouraged him to try acting instead. He is best known for his role as PC Michael Rosie Penrose in both the short-lived sitcom The Growing Pains of PC Penrose and the longer-running series Rosie. He also appeared in Sex and the Other Woman, Captain Kronos Vampire Hunter, Frightmare, Captain Zepp Space Detective, Spender, and Doctors.
So how bad of a singer do you have to be for your friend to say, maybe you should try acting instead?
Don't go on the X Factor, mate.
Anne Lambton had a small role as Dr. Mary McKay. Her full name is Lady Anne Mary Gabriel Lambton, the daughter of the formerly 6th Earl of Durham. She's a character actor who's appeared in small roles in Sid and Nancy, Howard's End, The Witches, and Mr. Henderson's Presents, as well as an episode of The Nanny with Fran Drescher.
That was a voice off.
Sarah Huntley had the very small role as Molly Thomas. She appeared in EastEnders, Casualty, Magic Granddad, and For Love Nor Money. She also works as a voice coach and drama teacher, according to her website.
I think she actually, her one scene where she is murdered, I think she's very strong in that scene. She doesn't say anything in that scene, but the way she lets her face do the talking is quite heartbreaking, actually.
Because it's a big thing that Barnaby notes, that like she was turned to face the wall. You know, the murderer couldn't look at her, and I think in that scene you see why. You know, yeah, she does look devastated.
Yeah. This is a man she trusted. Yeah.
Rufus Jones has a cameo as a talk show host. You know, he started his career as a member of the comedy troupe Dutch Elm Conservatoire before his first appearance on TV in the miniseries White Teeth. Now, he's appeared in Katie Brand's Big Ass Show, Mongrels, Edge of Heaven, Hunderbee, W1A, Home, The Little Princess, Flack, and Dodger. He also appeared in the film Paddington, but not greatest film of all time, Paddington 2. Most recently, he played Teddy Roosevelt in a TV miniseries. And if you look at the images on his IMDb page, he looks a lot like Teddy Roosevelt.
I'm so glad he could. The minute I saw him in it, I was like, that's Rufus Jones. He's an amazing comedic character actor, and he's so versatile. He so disappears into every role he has had. And I would encourage anyone listening to definitely, W1A is a really great, really underrated comedy series from the last sort of decade. It's about the BBC. It's about working at the BBC, basically, and it's so good. It's really funny.
Now, we have a lot of return visitors this episode. As mentioned before, Anton Lesser was Reverend Stoned. He also played an unlikable person in the Midsomer episode Birds of Prey. He attended RADA, which is the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts for people who haven't listened to us before, and won the Bancroft Gold Medal as the most promising actor of the year when he graduated. He was a member of the Royal Shakespeare Company, where he played the likes of Romeo, Brutus, Hamlet, and Richard III. His first TV role was in the 1979 miniseries The Mill on the Floss. He's worked steadily ever since, appearing in Endeavour, Wolf Hall, The Crown, Mrs. Potter, Andor, Dickensian, and in some tiny show called Game of Thrones. I don't know. Played somebody named Qyburn, who's the right-hand man of Cersei Lannister. And how about that butt cut in this episode?
That hairstyle was doing a lot of lifting in this episode.
He is just, I always enjoy seeing him and he's so, as we have discussed, he's so good in this episode. I love him in Endeavour. He has, and he probably isn't like this in real life, but there's this uptightness that he plays so well. That, you know.
But I thought like Eileen, you said his obliviousness in this episode to anything that is not his own kind of vendetta against the foolish ghost, stuff is so good that his wife could be having an affair literally in front of him, and he just has no idea.
and the strong choice to go into a bookstore and destroy property.
Yeah.
with no real consequences, which is, again, this police force's priorities seem to be...
It's all over the place, yeah.
Well, I guess if you're always trying to solve triple homicides, that your resources are stretched.
Yeah, although I think, this episode, they don't do any illegal searches, which is pretty good for them,
That's true. Yeah, there are no warrantless searches. They actually do call the guy ahead of time. Now, Paul Jessen was Linton Pargeter, last of the Pargeters. He also appeared in Blood Will Out. He's an Olivier-winning stage actor known for his roles in The Normal Heart, Wolf Hall, and Death of a Salesman. On film, he's one of Mike Leigh's regular actors, appearing in All or Nothing, Vera Drake, and Mr. Turner. He's also appeared in Coriolanus, Rome, The Crown, and The Beast Must Die. Also, let's face it, he could easily play Steve Bannon in something. He has that look.
He doesn't have to do anything. Like, actually, if you look at his IMDb page, his current photo, he literally, all you have to do is give him some patchy skin, and he's a dead on for Steve Bannon.
And layer 3 or 4 shirts.
Feels like a burn on him.
I actually love him in this, and I think he's actually an excellent actor. And some of my favorite actors have played people that I really despise. So yeah.
He's really good in this as like that entitled, posh guy that, is not expecting any consequence to fall on him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also his death face. Classic.
Yeah. A1, yeah.
Victoria Wicks was put upon Sarah Stone. She also appeared in Sins of Commission. She studied at the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama, where she won awards for Most Promising Student. She appeared in the classic BBC sitcom Drop the Dead Donkey as Sally Smedley. She also appeared in The Mighty Boosh. I love saying that. Doctor Who, Skins, Sherlock, Wizards vs. Aliens, The Imitation Game, and The Larkins. In 1996, she joined The Wrestling School, a theater company created by the playwright Howard Barker, and has since gone on to appear in 9 of his plays around the world. Richard Graham was Stanley Goodfellow. He was in the episode Breaking the Chain. He's originally from Kent and has appeared in a number of films like My Beautiful Laundrette, In the Name of the Father, Titanic, Gangs of New York, Vera Drake, and Phantom Thread. His most recent credit is as John O'Highway on EastEnders.
He's an actor. I thought he did a very good job, especially at the end when he was kind of telling what happened. And I just couldn't find a lot of. He doesn't do a lot of. There's not a lot of interviews. He doesn't really have like a Wikipedia. He has like a minor Wikipedia page and a little bit on IMDb, but he really does seem to just be all about the work. Especially he has worked 3 times with Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah, and that's some dedication there. Elizabeth Payne played Woman with Bad Taste in Men, Nesta Goodfellow. She's also in the latest series of Midsomer in the episode The Debt of Lies. Elizabeth doesn't do a lot of on-screen acting. Midsomer is literally 1/4 of her IMDb page. She also appeared in The World of Lee Evans, Donovan, and 50 Ways to Kill Your Lover. According to one website, she also has a mezzo-soprano singing voice and can dance tap. Brian Parr was in the small role of Colin Thomas and also appeared in Written in Blood and Picture of Innocence. He's another character actor who's appeared in Shoestring, Blue Ice, and The Brief. He's a RADA grad who trained at the RSC in a lot of roles he describes as killers and clowns. So how was he not in Send the Clowns? Claire Higgins appeared in the voice-only role performing Medea. She appeared in Midsummer Rhapsody and Death in a Chocolate Box. She's a 6-time Olivier nominee, but near as I can tell, she never did Medea, so not sure why she's in this one. But she does a fine job with it. Probably friends with Nettles. Everybody's friends with Nettles. She's appeared in Hellraiser, Fatherland, The House of Mirth, Being Human, Doctor Who, Ready Player One, and The Sandman.
There's something about this episode between her and sort of the Rufus Jones. There's a lot of fun cameos for no real reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the village star this week goes to, and I watched the YouTube clip to see how to say this properly, Yaron Krabbe, who played our psychic Victor Leveno. Krabbe is Dutch, comes from an artistic family. His father and grandfather were painters, his brother a writer, and his mom was a film translator. He found out later in life that his mother was Jewish and that her whole family had been killed in the Holocaust. He rose to prominence in film due to his work with the director Paul Verhoeven in Soldier of Orange and The Fourth Man. In America, he appeared in The Living Daylights, Jumping Jack Flash, Immortal Beloved, and Ocean's 12. But most notably, he was in The Fugitive, where, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen a 30-year-old movie, he played the main bad guy responsible for killing Richard Kimball's wife. He's also a painter in his own right, and some of his work has appeared on Dutch postage stamps.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I really think that this is a strong episode with some really terrific acting and some great actors.
I think, and we could talk about this in the second half, I feel like he was supposed to be cast as the murderer, and something happened where that didn't happen. He kind of disappears he disappears for large chunks of this episode. And I think I think there's a lot of like these weird sort of red herring kind of clues. They turn out to be red herring clues, but there's a lot of things that sort of lean towards. I thought he was supposed to be the murderer, and I think because I think his ending is so weird for him.
I feel like his part is the better part, and it would maybe have been more satisfying if he was the murderer.
Yeah.
It's maybe skipping to my final thoughts, but I think this is a great episode with great performances in terms of like vibe, but I feel like the conclusion is a bit like for me. But I do think that his character is really fun, and it feels like he's having a lot of fun doing it. In the moments where he's on screen.
Yeah, I definitely think he's having a lot of fun, and I think he enjoyed it. I think Lesser is having fun. Yeah, I can see a lot of people having fun with this episode, and I love. And for me, I mean, you pointed out Anton Lesser and Yaron Krabbe kind of mirroring each other, and I think there's Paul Jessen has a little bit of, so there's a kind of a triangle there between the with these three great male actors. I think this is a very strong male actor episode.
And then there's a few kind of surprising like slapsticky moments in this as well that make it feel a bit Scooby Doo. Like there's some great Jones moments.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about the Jones moments.
We're going to talk about that. This is a good point. We're going to take a break here, and we're going to be back with our second half in just a second. And we're back. Let's talk the second half of Talking to the Dead.
So it was your fault.
What was my fault?
It was your fault that Cyrus Levanu was accused of fraud.
Well, he is a fraud.
You're such a cynic.
Joyce, people like ghost stories. They enjoy being scared. It's basic human nature. You don't believe in them, do you?
Well, why not? I have an open mind, unlike some people.
Stanley is taken to a psychiatric hospital where he is diagnosed with being in a dissociated state from whatever he has witnessed. And meanwhile, the whole case is starting to revolve around antiques. The body Levino found is Terence Lowther, a member of an antique thieving ring, and Barnaby believes the Natsuki was stolen from the priory, but Pargeter never reported a theft. He's acting super suspiciously, attempting to hang out with the drivers of the mysteries SUV at a local pub, and really anxious to get out of the country. Meanwhile, Brimstone goes into the woods to show up Levino and do his own exorcism. He finds the body of Colin Thomas sitting upright in a shallow grave. The detectives search the cottages again and find a plane ticket to Florida in Nesta's name and a love note to her signed Sex Bomb. They chase a mass cyclist fleeing the house and realize it's Nelms because, honestly, no one else is fit enough in this episode to bike like that. When confronted, Nelms admits that the Thomases had been stealing from the priory for a while. Barnaby tries to ask Goodfellow if he knew his wife was leaving him, but he's still just gibbering away. Barnaby takes Joyce to a talk given by Levino. He attempts to locate Nesta with his psychic powers and says she is in a dark place under a witch's sign, which causes Barnaby to start laughing uncontrollably and leave the talk. Outside, the mystery SUV rolls by and Barnaby gives chase, leaving Joyce on the side of the road to contemplate divorce. He follows it into the woods where he gets stuck in the mud. Continuing on foot, he hears spooky noises, but arrives at the priory too late, missing Pargeter and the drivers loading up the SUV with antiques. Luckily, he had already stationed Jones there, and Jones saw everything, so I'm sure Joyce is going to be thrilled that he left for nothing. WPC Stevens followed the SUV to Temple's shop. They find that a number of items at the shop are stolen and deduce that Pargeter is a fence. The next day, Barnaby and Jones hike into the woods and find hidden speakers in the trees blaring the spooky sounds. This causes Barnaby to publicly accuse Levino of planting them in order to scam people, which causes Levino to lose all his audience. While Brimstone gloats, Levino threatens him with a knife. And someone else has a knife, and they plan to use it on Goodfellow. Barnaby is called to the hospital and finds the knife, but not Stanley Goodfellow. The detectives try to confront Pargeter and find a fancy audio system playing the ghost sound. Barnaby realizes that Pargeter was using them to keep people out of the woods in some kind of contrived Scooby Doo level plan. They also find a plane ticket, just like Nesta's, and realize that Pargeter, the last person you would call Sex Bomb, is Sex Bomb. When they investigate a noise, they find Pargeter dead in an Iron Maiden, thus ending the Pargeter line. The pair chase a man through the woods and once again discover Stanley in the shack, acting scared, but this time Barnaby tells him to cut the crap, which leads to the reveal. Stanley is our murderer and has only been playing crazy. Turns out he had known about the whole fencing scheme but kept quiet so he could steal bits and make extra money. He caught Lowther breaking in and killed him, burying him in the woods. Nesta and the Thomases wanted to go to the police, but Stanley overruled them with a shotgun, thus kidnapping them. When Colin fought back, he killed him and made the women bury him. Molly escaped back to her house where Stanley killed her. He put Nesta down in the well to hide her and faked his dissociated state. He knew Nesta was planning to leave him and realized it was with Pargeter when Pargeter tried to get him at the hospital with the knife. But Stanley got the upper hand and followed Pargeter back to the house where he killed him. Rather than escaping, he led the detectives to his wife in the well, showing that he's not a bad multiple murderer after all. Jones points out that there's a horseshoe over the well, which is a witch's sign. So it's just like Levino said, and no way Barnaby's going to admit that. In the end, Sarah leaves Brimstone for Nelms, but Joyce stays with Tom, and even goes with him when he takes her out into the woods to show her that there's no such thing as ghosts, and oh hey, there's Levino's dead body against a tree. Bullard says that Levino wasn't murdered by Stanley, but that he died of something called parasympathetic rebound. In other words, he died of fright.
Mm.
So the killer turns out to be Stanley, and we find out that he has literally been running this group of people through the woods through almost the entirety of the investigation. When there are police running around the woods, he's shotgunning people, and nobody is hearing it. Does this timeline end up?
Well, this is what I mean, because his explanation is basically like, I used to be the groundskeeper. I know these woods like the back of my hand. And I was just like, I'm sorry, Stanley, that's not enough. Like, you can't. That's not an answer. Like,
Someone's going to notice like a large group of people leaves the trail, like the dogs couldn't find a scent of them. Like,
and the woods have been like full of of like the spiritualists all stomping about, standing on dead bodies. But like your man is just like, nah, we were just hanging out, just moving around,
And also, how good of an actor is he that he manages to fake a dissociated state so well that either the therapist is so bad that she can't tell the difference, or he's so good that he manages to fake it expertly, which seems like it would be hard.
My hope is that like Barnaby made a note for someone to follow up with that institution, because I would be worried that because I mean I did like that the actor they got playing the doctor, they made look kind of quite Scooby Doo, like she's got kind of like quite volumized hair, and she's very dramatic. I've noticed she said whatever happened to him lies beyond description or something, and it's a bit like, take it down, come on.
Yeah.
But I think that is sort of trying to lead you towards believing something really scary is in the woods, so that when it's revealed that it was him all along, you're gonna be a bit more surprised, maybe.
I mean, also just like there are tests, like they're going to test you out to make sure that you're like not faking this, or that there's something like there's no way he's good enough to be able to just fake it. That does not stand up to the smell test.
No, not at all.
Let's go back again to this whole antique ring plan, because as we have said many times, this is a Scooby Doo plot. Faking a haunting to cover up your theft or moving stolen goods or whatever is literally the plot of like 10 Scooby Doo episodes.
It's very good. It's very fun. And I love, we've got Chekhov's Iron Maiden as well, which Jones gets hilariously shut in the first half. Then that pays off when Pargeter is impaled in it, which is quite fun. But there is, if you actually watch Midsomer, most of the time they tell you exactly what the answer is, and there's a lot of shots early on of just the trees and like wind blowing through the trees and stuff, and it's like saying, well, that's where the ghosts are, because that's where they find the speakers and things.
Yeah,
but it is very silly.
Also, those were wireless speakers.
Yeah.
Great range.
Yeah.
Very good range and very good output for 90. What year was this? Early 2000s.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, there's eerie sounds in the woods. You hear these screams and ghostly sounds, and I'm pretty sure it's Vincent Price reciting the lines from Thriller.
And how does it not pick up other things? Yeah. Yeah. Like, I hear ghosts, and wait, is somebody watching football
on their nice telly?
Yeah.
Pargeter is sex bomb, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, when you've got it, right?
I guess. But what exactly was he? What was the plan with Nesta?
They're going to Disney World.
Yeah, right. I guess she was going to leave hers, but like that doesn't really seem to factor in to any of the rest of it at all.
Yeah. And why was she stealing from him?
Yeah, that's a good question. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, she's stealing from him, and also like gonna run away with him. Is this like, is it just to cover up with her husband or whatever? But I don't know.
She's playing both sides, so she always comes out on top,
I just want to say, it sounds like a perfectly normal marriage to me.
See, this is why I think there was a bigger role for Levino. I feel like it's maybe in like an original draft or something when they were originally shooting it, Levino was the person having an affair with Nesta, and that maybe Levino was sex bomb, and that the Pargeter thing just made no sense. It kind of came out of and maybe part of that too is we never actually meet Nesta. We never actually meet the Thomases. They are gone from moment one, and we only ever see them in the flashback and the reveal. but it just, I don't know. It just seemed like there was a bigger role somewhere along, like a bigger role for Levino, and then maybe Crabbe had like, no, I can only do 2 days.
Yeah.
So like, how do we scramble to change things around? Levin, like, I don't know. I feel like there's more of a reason for or Stanley to maybe be involved, because they point out at the beginning that there was I believe it was the Thomas's child that dies, that was also sort of in a dissociated state. So therefore, maybe Stanley was imitating this kid before the kid died from pneumonia or frostbite. It just seemed to be, you don't get an actor like Crabbe and then give him this really small weird part. He makes more sense as Pargeter.
Yeah, because like mentioning, the child Peter Thomas is a really big, like, that's one of the first things Barnaby starts asking people about, and then that just disappears almost entirely. But that would, now that you mention it, be a perfect hook for like them getting involved in a psychic or a medium, right?
Yep.
And there are bits early on that feel very intentional. Like, I really like the opening where it's just it's a really kind of effective to just have this almost like a zombie apocalypse thing where it's like, there's still food on the table for breakfast, and it's very creepy. And then by the end, where a guy's just in the woods in it, like, that's a very different kind of vibe.
So it was really zombies, was what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah.
Although you got, like, why was Barnaby and Jones called in? Because they're murder police, and there's no dead bodies. So you're like, look, we've got a backlog of triple homicides that we are working on. Call us when you find a body.
Yeah. And then poor Peter Thomas, the dead child, just gets memory holed by the end. Like Gail, you should do a special episode where you investigate the disappearance of Gail Stevens, who just is just donezo. She's gone, never seen again.
And poor Dan Scott.
I know. But because Gail, it feels like, because I think later on she goes into plain clothes and stuff, right? And it feels like she's going to be set up to be like, the new sidekick. And then I think, they must have just completely sort of rebooted production on the new Barnaby almost.
Yep. She left at the same, or she was out at the same time that Nettles retired. So it could be that case of just like, well, we don't want to focus on Jones we need to focus on Jones and the new Barnaby.
Yeah.
And she just gets in the way. But yeah, the chemistry between the two is fantastic. And I kind of liked that. Like that's those scenes where Jones is like kind of wishy-washy asking her out, and then she's just straight up, I know what I want.
Yeah. And oh, by the way, let's get together and can you go on the stakeout for me? He's a worse date than Tom.
This is one of the worst Joyce dumpings ever, I think.
Yeah.
Like, he just, no explanation, just drives off, and the poor woman is standing in the street at night.
There's no cabs.
Just like looking around, the long-suffering Joyce Barnaby,
And how are they still married by the end of his tenure as a police officer? I mean, that Joyce has got to be the most forgiving person of all time.
I'd love to see both of them just come back for like a special reunion episode, and all we hear from Joyce is like, he never abandons me anymore. He's always around. Really wish I could have my space back so I could do more classes.
Yeah. I just want them to come back so he can have a moment with Annette Badland.
Yeah.
Where they like call each other by their Bergerac names.
It is interesting, like, sex and relationships does play like this huge sort of turning point. You have Jones and Stevens, who just can't seem to get it started. Barnaby and Joyce, who've been around forever and seem to be base their whole relationship on horrible dates. And then, Mrs. Stone and the mailman, who at the end of this episode, they're, going off together.
At least somebody has a happy ending.
She had several.
Yeah.
It was very sweet. I thought that he's obviously a kind of scoundrel, but he kind of makes it clear that he does actually really like her, and it seems quite sweet.
Mhm.
But it is very funny because the Brimstone at the end is just she even calls him out for being oblivious, and his response is to be like, surely it's too late for the postman. Like, just doubling down, Matt. Don't double down, triple down. You know nothing.
Yeah.
So we had a strange kill in this one, which was dying of fright.
Yep.
Which, guess what? That actually could happen, apparently. According to Dr. Robert Glatter, he was an emergency physician at Lenox Hill here in New York, the answer is yes. He wrote a 2015 article, which you can find on the Live Science website, where he describes what happens with the body's fight or flight response and how it can go wrong. So apparently all the adrenaline can cause an arrhythmia called ventricular fibrillation, which makes the heart quiver rather than beat. So this leads to a drop in your blood pressure, which causes loss of consciousness. This can even happen in regular people who don't have heart conditions, although having a heart disease does make it riskier. There's also something called stress cardiomyopathy or broken heart syndrome, which is often dismissed as a regular heart attack. So any highly emotional event, even a positive one, could set it off. So as for something called parasympathetic rebound, the few medical journals that we looked at, and we're not doctors, so we didn't really know what the hell we were looking at, but it seems like it's probable, but who knows how often it happens.
Well, it was a weird ending shot, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the episode went long that episode is longer than the normal length of a Midsomer episode. It went long to get there.
Yeah.
Like it could have ended with, with any number of, with just them like pulling the woman out of the well, and Barnaby is like, I'm not going to give Levino the satisfaction, but you get an extra long, like a few minutes just to get to this bit.
Yeah. Yeah, you have the trip to the woods and then back to the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So.
There are a lot of moments in this episode where Barnaby goes into the woods with someone and then is immediately separated from them and continues walking around talking to them, unaware that they are nowhere near him.
Barnaby in this episode is almost as oblivious as Brimstone.
Yeah.
There would have been a hysterical scene of just like, but this guy's our mailman. Speaking of weird biology things, so dead bodies do not sit up, even if there is gas in the stomach. This is a myth or weird scientific thing that they made up just to get a creepy effect. But for all intents and purposes, that does not happen.
No, but it was a great shot.
It was a great shot. It was great.
It was great, but then that would also happen to any time, like these bodies that are on the coroner's table that just like pop. It's like, no, you get down again. Stay down. Bad body.
It'd be like the coroner scene or the morgue scene in Buffy the Vampire Slayer where the vampire sits up.
So we talked a little bit about the physical comedy in this episode, but this is a highlight of Jones' pratfalls, goofy reactions, falling out of a frickin' tree.
Oh, it's great, isn't it? The flailing little legs.
This is top-notch Jones.
His reaction to being locked in the Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
You locked me in.
I love Barnaby's response is always just to sort of be like, well, you're fine, so shake it off,
What, you did get impaled? Oh, look, this is how it is.
Yeah, a puzzle.
Yeah.
You should have been impaled.
And they talk about the Iron Maiden as if it were a real Iron Maiden, as if that was a real thing and not a made-up thing. Because the Iron Maidens weren't a real torture device. They were, made up in the Victorian age.
Also,
and then there's the band.
Yes. Who's by the way, their song, didn't they do the song Run for the Hills, which
yes, indeed.
Stanley Goodfellas theme song. Eileen, you did didn't you do some research on the Netsukis?
The Netskis,
Or
yeah,
Netskis.
they are. Yeah, they've been around for a long time, and I looked at prices on them, and basically it's hard to tell, and you do need an expert because you can't tell by what they're made of. It has more to do with the age and the skill of the craftsman as to the price, because they can range from $5 to like $10,000. So the older the better, but they are made from wood, they're made from ivory. Whalebone is actually not a very common one that I have found online on auction sites. Tusk is another one, elephant tusk they've been made out of. So they can be made from a lot of stuff. Ivory is a little more common, but wood is also very, very common as well. And if you ever get a chance to go see an exhibition of Netskis, they're really worthwhile seeing. They are very small but they are exquisite, and they require a lot of really great craftsmanship.
I have to say that antique thieving gang was really good at how they carefully displayed everything in the house. All these stolen antiques that are just, rather than like lumped in a corner till they could be sent to the next place.
Yeah.
No, we're going to carefully lay them out.
These are my most stolen antiques.
You mean they weren't in a bathroom behind a shower curtain? Very topical reference there. Sorry.
It is funny. It just is like this thieving gang who just goes to these like just, why don't you just drive them? Like, why do they have to sit in this place? I guess maybe the realities of like finding this stuff in an antique shop, but it just seems to be just like, well, if you're just shipping them to France, like, why do they have to go to Temple's place anyways?
And like just put them in a safe out the back where a policeman can't take pictures of them.
Yeah.
Put them in that Iron Maiden and just lock the door.
Yeah.
No one's opening that. Apparently you can get locked into them real easily. No one just goes into
or hiding behind the shower curtain.
No, that would be crazy. No intelligent person would just put valuable items in a shower in I don't know, say like a golf course where just anybody could find them.
I don't think any intelligent person has done that.
My favorite line of this entire episode, though, is when Barnaby realizes that someone's been following them, but now I am the tracker.
Yeah. That's some great Barnabying, yeah, top notch.
So, final thoughts on this episode?
I think it is a really fun one, and I do like a lot of the character work in it, but as a mystery, it gets a little bit unsatisfying. Because even, like you just said, Barnaby says, now I am the tracker, and then he finds this guy, and then is like, well, I guess he's not the murderer, like, immediately after saying he's being followed through the woods. So, yeah, I just think the ending explanation is a bit rushed, and it leaves a lot kind of unsaid, and there are all these things that may be set up that don't pay off in the way you might expect. But having said that, some really nice costume work. I like some of the direction. I love a lot of the performances. And yeah, top Jones episode.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a top Jones episode. I think it's one where the acting and the character work is excellent. I think there's some nice cinematography to it. For me, I know they filmed it in the spring, like in April or March or something, but for me, it has a Halloween feel to it because of the ghosts and everything. And I do like that there is ambiguity about the ghosts, whether they exist or not. So, but yeah, it's not the best mystery. It is very Scooby Doo, but I do like this episode quite a bit. It's very fun.
I love this episode. This episode is bonkers. Bonkers, yeah. And I mean that in the best, like the reason why, like if Midsomer was just a straight old boring mystery show, like it would not be on the air for as long as it has been. It has like a certain bonkers element going all the way back to those Rainbirds. This just is one where it just fully embraces. There's like, well, if we're gonna be crazy about this, let's just go. Take it to 100. Yeah, it makes no sense. It's a weird plan that would not function in any way, shape, or form in the real world. But it's so much fun. It down to even like the weird affair between the mailman and the those funny comic moments of just like they're clearly having sex in that church.
Although I would say, Midsomer Murders is in many respects almost a documentary series, because while there are not as many murders in rural England as there are in the show, you would meet many a character from Midsomer Murders in like my hometown. There were rumors about the guy who delivered our coal, like
it's like the Florida of England. Shout out to all our listeners in Florida.
I grew up near a pub that was specifically for crop circle fans. It's all going on. It's all happening.
Well, yeah, we do want to know about your experience with crop circles since you're in Wiltshire.
Yes. So I grew up in Wiltshire, which is all, that was crop circle central. And in the 90s, especially, it was popping off. And there was a pub called The Barge that was for the circle heads who were just really interested in cataloguing them. But there was also a kind of cottage industry for like showing tourists crop circles. And one summer there weren't any. So a guy in a pub may or may not have given my brother an amount of cash in hand money and his friends to go out with a plank and a bit of string to make a circle in one of the cornfields. So, for what I don't know about any of the others, but that one at least was not made by aliens.
You're lucky your brother didn't end up naked.
I know, electrocuted.
I love that part of England because it is very odd. There are so many weird things going on. Yeah,
it is, and there's a lot of gossip, and everyone sort of knows everyone else's business. And there are the beekeepers and the doll's house makers, and there are all these people that have these weird little things that they're really into. I don't know if they'd murder over it, but
So I do have one last question before we.
Ooh, okay, yeah.
Ooh.
Do you believe in ghosts in real life?
No, I genuinely don't. Although I am open to being challenged. So if anyone,
I believe it. My grandmother lived in a haunted house.
Really?
Yes, as a out in Montana, as a growing up with her family in Montana, their house, there was apparently one room where nobody was allowed to sleep in. Like nobody, and not like by the family members, like whatever was in that room. Her older brother tried. He ran out of the room in the middle of the night and would never talk about why. But they would always talk about hearing noises and people moving around in the upstairs when they knew nobody was up there, or like coming down the back stairs and going out the back door, and they knew they were the only people in the house. So
I have to say I have a 150-year-old house. I know what goes bump in the night. It's my two cats and the occasional raccoon.
See, all my family believe in ghosts. Like my family, lived in a haunted house. My mum grew up there, and my aunts and stuff, and they all said there was a ghost who would like sit on the end of their bed and stuff. And I'm just like, nah, it wasn't though, was it? It wasn't a ghost. I'm Barnaby. It wasn't a ghost.
It was two guys running a thieving ring.
Exactly.
Yeah. It was a raccoon or an owl.
An owl. It was attacked by an owl. Yeah.
So, Alice,
my book is called Grave Expectations, and it's out now in the UK and in America, where you lovely people are. And it's a fun, modern, millennial, cozy crime with ghosts and swearing and falling over and a Chekhov's dildo as opposed to a Chekhov's Iron Maiden. And,
finally get to put that mature content rated warning on.
That word isn't that mature, is it? And I think it's fun. It's hopefully fun, and it's inspired, I would say, in no small part by Midsomer Murders and cozy procedurals, mysteries of that kind. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I would say anybody who enjoys Midsomer Murders would really enjoy this book. And there's a lot of people who enjoy Midsomer Murders, so
Yeah. Yeah. And, and it's in the tradition of Agatha Christie with the old manor house, but it is very modern. And that's what I love. It is taking all the classic tropes, keeping what you want, and then turning the rest on their head. And I love that.
Well, thank you so much. Been very kind. And this has been so much fun. So thank you so much for having me.
We'll have you back.
Yeah, we have loved having you. Yeah.
Anytime.
Where
can people find you, Alice? Like on social media?
I'm mostly on Twitter at ABWords, but B like the insect. I've only, since I've been doing podcasts, have I discovered what an inconvenient Twitter handle I have. Because it's ABEE words.
We will throw that into the show notes for
Thank
you.
Yeah.
As well as a link, as links for people who might be interested in the book. So that's everything we wanted to talk about with this episode. We want to thank you all for listening. If you have anything you want to discuss about Talking to the Dead or Midsomer Murders, please feel free to email us at welcometomidsomer@gmail.com. If you want us to use the email in the show, please say so. We're also Welcome to Midsomer on Facebook and Instagram. If you liked what you heard, please consider subscribing to us or rating and reviewing us on iTunes. That really helps people find us. Tell all your friends about us. We will be back next month, and we hope you will join us again. As we take the road out of Midsomer, we want to thank you all again for listening and remind you that in Midsomer, haunted woods can be murder.
And usually are.
Welcome to Midsomer is produced by Eric Buscher and Eileen Becker. All clips in this podcast are used in compliance with the U.S. Copyrights Act Fair Use Exemption for criticism and commentary. Our logo and podcast art was designed by Smeedrai. Our theme music is by the infamous Space.